Hello everybody and welcome to BrickVault. Today in front of us we have not one, but two very large CR90 Corvettes. They are built perfectly to scale with our micro fleet, so technically they're micro builds if you want to call them that, even though they're very, very large. We have the Tantive 4 and the Liberator. These models were designed by the builder Too Impaired. You might remember him from his absolutely massive UCS Imperial Star Destroyer, the Eviscerator, and he's come at these models with the same incredible attention to detail. And before I jump in any further in this episode, I do want to say that if you wanted to build either or both of these models for yourself, you can find the instructions at our web store, www.brickvault.toys. Included with each purchase are the PDF step-by-step building files to follow along, as well as a digital parts list that allows you to order the pieces you're going to need for these builds very, very quickly and easily. Buying instructions is a great way to help support us here at the channel, as well as the insanely talented designers that we work with, like Too Impaired. And like I mentioned before, there are a bunch of other micro ships that we also have up in the web store, and these are built to scale perfectly, so they will all fit into a larger diorama if that's what you want to do. Now, first thing is first, there are not one, there are two of these giant UCS scale versions of this model. Every time we've seen Lego sets of this ship in the past, it is always the Tantive 4. Makes sense, that's Leia's ship. In fact, that's the first thing you see in the very first Star Wars movie. It has definitely made its impact in Star Wars and pop culture, but frankly, the real life and utility of these particular ships in the Star Wars universe were really fleshed out in Star Wars Rebels. So Too Impaired also knocked out a color combination, highlighting what I think is the most popular of these particular ships that you see in the show. This is the Liberator. There are several slightly different blue color variations of the Corvettes in the show, but this is the primary one serving with Phoenix Squadron. And outside of the Tantive 4, it is probably one of the most highly decorated ships in the Rebel fleet. Anyways, I'm just glad that an alternate color combo was made for this particular ship. It definitely deserved one. But in order to get a closer look at the details on these models, we should probably look at one at a time, and for old time's sake, let's start off with the Tantive 4. Logistically, it is 22.5 inches long, 57 centimeters, 8.25 inches high, 21 centimeters, and 7.25 inches wide, 18 centimeters. That makes it slightly shorter than the most recent Lego Star Wars set of this ship that came out, but proportionally excellent and detailed to an incredible degree. As you can see, Too Impaired went pretty studless with this design, or used the snotting technique, studs not on top, which of course is not a necessary feature for an excellently designed model, but contextually it makes a lot of sense when putting together the CR90 in this way. The extra greebling detail on the face, in between the panels on the center body, and all over the 11 back engines really pop quite well in contrast to the smooth looking sheet metal that you see for the rest of the body, and that especially becomes prevalent when you really pull back from the model and look at this whole thing from afar. Now, I suppose it's worth talking about the functions of this model. Obviously, it's primarily meant for display, but you can move a few things around here and there. The bottom turret swivels back and forth, and you can pull the guns up and down. Same goes for the turret at the top. The design is the same, just inverted to be on top of the ship. Movement goes in a full 360 degrees for the smaller cannons on the sides, though you can't twist them up or down. They just kind of move around in a single circle. And then of course the radar dish in the back spins around, and there are 2 points of articulation on those little arm pieces. And that's it. It's pretty simple as far as a micro build. It's primarily meant for display. And now there's just a few iconic areas of the ship that I'd like to focus on a little bit, just so you guys can get a better view at a few of the different build techniques that Two Impaired used. Starting off with the cone-shaped head. In fact, I called this the hammerhead before the hammerhead ship came out. But the slopes in the front are very subtly turning in towards themselves, where you can see the rounded shape on either end full of greebling. It's a relatively robust design, which I'm glad to say it connects well to the body of the ship in the back. And it's one of the aspects of the model that most builders, I think, find particularly difficult to attempt. Moving on to the sandwich, quote-unquote, section of the model, just behind the two turrets on top and bottom. There's a great amount of mechanical greebling detail that sticks out in between both of these layers. Nice little details that make up turrets at the top that swivel, and then also, you can see the escape pods on the bottom side. That's where R2-D2 and C-3PO made their escape in the first movie. Now we are looking at the angular fins on either side of the airlocks. This is also one of those extremely distinctive and difficult features of the model. I like that Two Impaired made this whole area studless. This is where it really looks pretty good, because in many models there's usually undersides of plates that stick out, and so with the fins being slightly thicker, you end up just getting a cleaner look all around, especially once again when you look at this from afar. Now, getting into possibly the most distinctive feature of this ship, you have the 11 engines in the back. This is what made it so good as a blockade runner. It had really good acceleration and lots of redundancy in case a few of them ended up getting shot out in a battle. It could still move pretty easily. There's tons of greebling all over the tops and sides, usually made with certain types of droid arms and clip bars and things like that. And in the back you can see the trans orange dishes to show some of the glowing engine effect. There's actually two different ways you can display the backs of these engines. You'll see the other one on the Liberator. And then very quickly, here are some of our other micro builds integrating with the Tantive 4. If you ever wanted to know what it would look like if the Millennium Falcon docked with this ship, well, you're looking at it right now. This is the correct scaling between both of these models, which is really, really fun for us and part of why we love building in micro scale. Now here's the Outrider and the Falcon, both docked with the Tantive 4. Maybe Dash and Han are both trying to flirt with the princess, who knows? But either way, it's pretty fun showing this little size comparison. Here's a quick shot of more ships with the Tantive 4, but you'll see even more of that when we move on to the Liberator. One thing you will notice immediately with this model, it's not just a blue version of the Tantive. The color combinations and general color variability on this ship are very different. The large engines in the back are built primarily in dark bluish gray. The angular fins are light gray, and there's also just a lot more blue highlighting on the white body compared to how the Tantive has just a little bit of red here and there. But outside of the color variation, there are a few tiny areas of the ship that are also slightly different, namely the top of the rotating turrets in the front on the Liberator is actually a quad cannon. Kind of looks like the old school World War II M45 quad mount a little bit. The four top rotating cannons are a slightly different shape, just used with a different clip piece, but technically they did look a little bit different in the show there. And then you'll also notice, oddly enough, that there are some rather large cannons attached to where normally the airlocks are. And they actually are still airlocks, but I suppose the ship is modular enough where you can, in fact, attach a cannon to this section of the ship. This has the ability to rotate a little bit as well. And then here is the back of the ship with an alternate display option. You can see those rice hats in flat silver have a bit of a different effect on the ship and sort of mimic the way the engines might look if they weren't actually on at the moment. Both display options are included in the parts list. And then here is a fun display option on top of that. You can take the side cannons completely off of the airlocks, take off this one little 2x2 tile, and then attach some of the scalable A-wings from Phoenix Squadron. And then of course, for further comparison, because I know you guys would have asked, this is what the Ghost looks like next to the Liberator as well. And you see these two ships docked with each other several times throughout the series. And if you look at some of the screen grabs, they scale really well with each other, which I'm super happy about. There are in fact 4 different colors now included if you wanted to make make a few different types of these A-Wings to be flying alongside the Liberator. I also took about 5 minutes to attach some of the other Alphabet Squadron, I suppose, just a few different starfighters to different areas of the ship. There was basically little to zero modification done here in order to get all of these ships attached to the Corvette. And with a little bit more playing around in our free time, I'm going to start setting up some squadrons in formation around the Corvettes, which I think would be really, really cool looking. For a studless build, there's still actually plenty of attachment points. And the next step, I suppose, would be making mid-air explosions. I don't think I forgot the handling section of this video. Either Tantive is pretty much exactly the same when it comes to structural stability, as you can imagine. There aren't really a lot of places on the model I would suggest squeezing particularly hard. Generally, it's decently robust, with of course lots of little bits of greebling that you can pull off. And when it comes to supporting the model, I would say you can pick it up by the stand, or have like a hand right around where the stand attaches, and you can place any part of your hand underneath the cylindrical center of the body, and of course not on those little side flaps. And even though the engines are quite large, definitely not a part of the model that you want to be supporting the weight from. You can, if you want, put the model up on its engines. I mean, structurally it's possible, though of course it's just one of those things where I wouldn't want to do that as a long-term display. We're pretty fortunate that the correct sort of center weight of this model happens to fit right in at that bottom cylinder, and it's pretty easy to slide the model around on a table once you've actually got it set up there. So anyways, that's about it for the quote-unquote micro scale version of the Tantive and Liberator. It feels awesome to be fleshing out more and more of the micro universe of Star Wars here. Of course, like always, I ask what you guys would want to see in the future coming from us. Let me know what you guys think about this model in particular, and if you did want to get the building instructions, you can find them at our web store, www.brickvault.toys. Thanks so much for sticking around to the end of the video. If you enjoy our content, you can always like or subscribe, share, do whatever you want to do. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time at BrickVault.